Hey, everybody. Welcome. Today is Wednesday, October 9th. We're glad to have you with us. Hi, Tracy. How are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you. I'm concerned for our students in Florida and in harm's way, and we're just hoping that you're all in safe places and that you are taking care of yourselves.
You
Heavy
know,
on my
I
mind today.
obviously for many years I lived in Celebration, Florida, just south of Orlando. I have been through this many times, and it's nothing to fool around with. So we certainly are thinking about all of you in the path of the storm, and those of you that were part of infected by Helen. And these are challenging times. On top of all of that, we would be remiss if we didn't acknowledge that we're now within 30 days of the presidential election. We know that is a matter of extreme importance, and that for many of you, you may be anxious or focused on the elections as well as your bar studies. And it's hard to multitask through this stuff. It would be my preference that you pay more attention to your bar study in the month of October. But I also know realistically that's challenging to do. And I've been through lots of presidential elections with bar takers. When you sit down to study for the bar, whether it's for a half hour, an hour, 3 hours, try to be really focused on your study. And when you are done with that study, then set it aside and focus on other things. The hardest part, I think, Tracy, is trying to study while you've got YouTube on in the background and you're watching or following something else, or you're getting emails or text messages about the campaigns. And that's a real thing. And so it's really important to segment and segregate this stuff off, don't you think?
Yes, I think a really good tool for that is to set yourself up for study sessions, for instance, 3 hours in length, even 2 hours and 45 minutes, and understand that the last 15 minutes will be time to check the news, check your phone, check your email. But for that 2 hours and 45 minutes, you'll devote your effort singularly to your bar study. That way, you're not denying that other part of your life, but you are putting it in its proper perspective. We have
Yeah.
Bobka coming on, which is great.
Bobka is one of our coaches. If you haven't met him, we'll get him here in a minute. Bobka does a group coaching call for us and wildly successful and now and for several years. So see if we can bring him into the conversation here. Friend,
Hi, sir. How you?
for those of you that don't know Bobka, he is one of our most popular group coaches, licensed attorney in Georgia, and has been with us for years now. Isn't that crazy to say, Bobka? It's been years.
Oh yeah, it's been years.
Yeah.
It's been how
Yeah.
long we've come.
Yeah. So we're really glad to have you with us today. We were just talking when you came on. Obviously, we're within 30 days of a presidential election. There's a lot of attention being given to that, but it can be a real distraction for a bar taker right now.
Oh, absolutely. I always say this, but do what you can and then forget about it. Tune out the noise and focus on the bigger picture because whatever happens in the elections is either going to go left or right, but it doesn't change what the bar exam is going to be.
That's right.
Vote, absentee, whatever, and then focus on your exam. You don't focus on stuff that has no bearing on you becoming an attorney.
If you're studying for the bar exam in February, that's your job right now. And given the way the bar exam is coming down, the challenges, the difficulties, the pass rates that we're seeing, you just can't afford to give up a full month of study because you're involved in other things. I find the people that use the month of October for the February exam generally do better than the people that wait until November, because you start in November and then suddenly it's Thanksgiving and then it's Christmas and then it's New Year's and you're into a 7 week window. And that's just not enough time right now to study for most of these bar exams. I know that's a splash of cold water to put on people this morning. If you're in the path of a hurricane, you got to evacuate, you may lose power. There's a whole bunch of things that are going to happen. Take care of yourself, be safe. And then when you can return to your studies, do that. Difficult times. And the bar exam, as you said, doesn't change and there won't be any give. In Florida, we've got a really odd situation here. The storm is headed towards Tampa. The exam is given at the Tampa Convention Center. I've lived in Florida for many years. This storm is really a killer. It's not impossible that the convention center will be damaged. We'll see what happens in terms of locations and how the exam is going to be given. We hope that everyone stays safe. Please don't be a hero. Get out of the way and take your bar review books with you. Remember, we're online, so you can get it all there. I want to talk a little bit about results first and answer some student questions and tell you about a new feature we've added in the last couple of weeks that I'm excited about called our Deep Dive Podcasts. The results season is starting to pick up. Georgia, your state, Bobga, released the results earlier this week, but they haven't given out any details. We've got names, but that's all. The results for first-time takers were good, but we don't have numbers for repeat bar takers. We don't know what that looks like. My sense is that it's remaining in the 20 to 25% pass range. That's my anecdotal sense of what's happening. As soon as we get those numbers officially reported, we'll share them with you. I will say that the other weird part about Georgia is that they are still not releasing publicly their subjects that they tested. And until they release them publicly, I can't talk about them. But I do know it was a tough exam. If you took that test and you were successful, congratulations. That's quite an accomplishment. If you were not successful, it's important to jump back in and start your studies now. Bobka, I know that you went through some of that process when you were studying. It's hard to get back emotionally and start studying, but it's really important, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. You have to feel. If you feel, it's okay to feel that feeling. But at the same time, you can't beat yourself more than you've already done. It's okay. You realize that this is what has happened. Now it's up to you to transform that energy. This is a setback, but I have to use it now like a setup for a greater comeback. And you take that energy and then you go right back into it and you ease yourself into it. You have to take it easy on yourself because we as humans always want things to go the way we want, and give yourself that grace and ease into it. As you mentioned, this is October. You don't want to ease yourself into it in November and then holidays comes around and then all of a sudden it's January and you're starting to freak out. In as much as you failed, which is a terrible experience, use that energy and galvanize yourself to be like, you know what, I'm going back in, I'm going to start early and slowly but surely wins the race.
Yeah, I think that's really important. We've gotten a few other states' results this past week, but not a lot of detail yet. A lot of states are holding back the detail. Illinois reported their results this week. Their repeat bar taker pass rate was 26%. So again, we're in that 20th percentile range. Nevada released results. New Jersey released results yesterday. Connecticut released results. We have no stats out yet officially there. Utah was the other state, and they had a real outlier. They only had a few bar takers, maybe 300, but they had a 57% repeater pass rate. That's an outlier number. Nobody else is that high. I suspect it's a very small number of actual repeaters there in that jurisdiction. So I know some of you might be thinking, well, maybe I should go take the UBE in Utah. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. I think there's some home cooking there. And if you're coming in from out of state, I'm not sure that's exactly the best place to be. But those are the numbers that we have. I expect we'll get some numbers this coming week out of New Jersey, Connecticut, Georgia, and we'll have some additional numbers. Now, what about New York? We never know when New York's going to release. My spidey sense keeps telling me that it's now. I would expect it to be this week. So we'll see what happens there. Texas, the Texas Supreme Court Justice will informally drop the numbers probably tomorrow. So people will know pass or fail late in the day. We've got California on November 8th. If you're in our course and were successful, congratulations. Let us know. We'd like to share your story and success. If you did not succeed on the exam, however, please contact us. Give us your score sheets. I'll set up a call to talk with you about your scores. We're doing it that way this year. We're actually doing one-on-one conferences, and your materials are available to you. As Bobka said, it's really important to take that energy. You need to pivot pretty quickly, and you can't afford to spend a week or 2 weeks feeling bad. You need to move right away. So your materials are available. We'll talk with you about how to get started or restarted and work from there. Tracy, you have any thoughts about that process of restarting when you get results that were not favorable?
Take a morning or an afternoon and clean up your office, clean up your workspace, organize, regroup, reset your brain to a place where you are taking a fresh start at it. Take the resources that you have from the last study that you think were helpful and get those in front of you. Learn from taking the exam that were maybe not up to snuff Think about upgrading and taking a workshop so that you can hone and refine those particular tools. Maybe just throw them out if they weren't good for you and start over. The tendency is to think, oh, I got that. And then just to move on. The more you say, I got that, your brain puts it back somewhere else and it may be harder to access it. So I think you start with being in house and organizing and face forward.
I think that it's difficult emotionally, but it's important. And I just don't think you get the luxury anymore of being able to wait really a long time to start your studies. This is a tough environment. Couple of other notes about results. One statistical number is that the mean multi-state score went up slightly from last year. The national conference is excited about that. What it means in reality for you as a bar taker is not much. Your score is still your score. So just something to be aware of. The other thing I want to talk about is the ongoing situation in California for February of 2025. We are still waiting for some clarity as to what the exam will be and who will administer it and how it will be administered. The present circumstance is that the California State Legislature and the California Supreme Court have both weighed in. They both pushed back on the California bar examiners to find a solution. The problem that the Cal Bar has right now is that if they use the Kaplan exam or the Kaplan exam to be developed, the test has to be substantially the same as the existing bar exam in order to comply with California state statutes, but it cannot be so similar that they get sued. And also not so similar that the NCBE doesn't ask for a restraining order or a temporary injunction against giving the exam. I don't know how they walk that line, honestly. I'm not sure anybody does. And so we continue to be in a twilight zone with respect to this exam. Our advice to anyone sitting for the California February 2025 exam, keep study as though it's the traditional bar exam because they cannot change the subjects. They cannot change anything substantial under state law. So you're still going to see 7 MBE subjects. You're still going to see 8 or 9 California subjects. You're still going to have performance tests, essays, and multiple choice. Beyond that, I think the biggest change would be that you would take the exam from home. Bobka, did you take the exam during COVID at home? Yeah. And there's some real advantages to doing it that way, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely, because you get to control your atmosphere and all of that. In as much as you get to avoid the convention center and the pressures of everybody, you equally have to make sure that maybe Amazon doesn't come knocking on your door because they have to deliver packages. Your eyes always have to be focused on the camera to make sure that let it not seem like you're reading foreign material. So there are all of those constraints, but it's great. You get to control your environment and be in your own space, comfortable as it is.
Yeah, you get to sleep at home. It's a big deal. I think that's going to be the primary difference ultimately is that California applicants will be able to take the exam from home, wherever home is. There's still a ton of details to be figured out. We know from the COVID at home tests, there were false claims of cheating that had to be resolved. There were technical problems that some people had, but for the most part, it actually went pretty well. But the NCBE is absolutely opposed to this. This is why I think we're going to see an injunction. If this exam looks too much like their test, I think they're going to step in and try and stop the exam. Having said all of that, study like it's the same exam. Do not wait. I don't think we're going to get clarity. Tracy, you've been watching this pretty closely. I doubt if we're going to get any clarity on this until late November, early December at the earliest, don't you?
I wish
Yeah.
I could say, given the fact that it's almost the middle of October, I think that's a safe
Yeah.
prediction. I don't think
Yeah.
it's coming any day soon.
No, that's about all we can tell you, but don't take your foot off the accelerator. Don't let this go by. If you get your results from the July exam in California on November 8th, and you want to sit for the February exam, you're going to have to turn on a dime to get going. We're there. We'll work with you. And as Tracy and Bobko said, we've got lots of resources and lots of ways to help you, but you will have no time at all. And you're going to have to be adjusting to whatever's going on. So we're prepared either way. If Kaplan produces their test, Not a problem for us. We've got the same body of questions that they have. If they go back to the regular bar exam, which I doubt we've got that, it is a wild environment. It reminds me a lot of COVID. What's going to happen next? I have no idea. So we'll keep you informed. We're continuing to watch it. We'll see what goes on.
But that's an important thing because COVID taught us how to pivot. It taught us how to adapt and not be stuck in one thing. So that's
Yeah.
just another metaphor, maybe that you can take forward into your new study. Be not afraid to pivot and to look at some new ways of coming about old material.
Yeah. All right. I want to pivot now for a minute.
Okay.
One of the things that I've been working on for a while are ways to simplify and explain material that would be helpful, particularly for foreign trained attorneys, people that have been out of law school for a long time, maybe people who are getting into the bar and seeing subject matter that is confusing and tough to get an overview of. I've been exploring a lot of AI resources, and I've come across one that I personally really like. It's allowing me to create what we're calling deep dive podcasts. I'm going to share a little bit of one with you in just a moment. We'll jump in. So, what we've done is to go into a number of different subjects and take our source material, our lectures, and our written outlines, and we've put them into an AI. We've asked the AI to review those materials to create a podcast. You're not going to believe this podcast when you start to hear it. I'm going to play a little bit of it in a moment. It's quite extraordinary. I don't think you're going to know that it's AI if I hadn't told you. What's important about this for the bar study is that we've picked some topics that are more challenging for people, and we've tried to break them down into shorter 20 to 30-minute podcasts and then study guides. This particular one is on UCC 9, and I'll play a little bit of it in a moment. In this lesson, which if you're in the Florida course, it's 9.8, we've got the brief summary of what the podcast contains, and then some timestamp information so you can jump right into something. So if you want to know about purchase money security interest, it's 6 minutes, 18 seconds. We've also got a study guide that we've created. And the study guide, I will show you in a moment. It's got some short answer questions. It's got a glossary. It's got some potential work that you could do. So it's a way to build into this. Now, I know that not every jurisdiction tests UCC 9, but I thought this would be an interesting one to just give you a feeling for it. Let me just play a
Legal
little bit of
document.
it
It's like
so
the
that you can
backbone of
hear.
how
uh,
business.
and,
Okay, get ready to dive into something. Try, but it's actually pretty fascinating. We're talking UCC Article 9.
I don't know, maybe like a
Yes,
movie
no.
premiere or something?
Definitely
Yes,
not our
you're
usual
hearing it.
water cooler talk. But honestly, this legal document, it's like the backbone of how business gets done, how money flows. We're talking loans, collateral.
Absolutely. It's the framework for how lenders protect themselves.
Exactly. So think about this. Our listener right now, they're either facing this in a big meeting, like a high stakes deal, or they're just super curious about how this stuff actually works.
Trust me, everyone should be at least a little curious about this. It touches so many aspects of our financial lives.
For sure. So we're diving deep into excerpts from,
Surprised how many people get caught off guard.
say, I want to buy a used car. What do I need to know about secured transactions? Are there any red flags I should be on the lookout for?
That's a great question. And you'd be surprised how many people get caught off guard by this. Imagine this. You're at a used car lot. You find the perfect car, price is right, everything seems great. You're ready to sign the papers.
That's familiar. Been there.
What you might not realize is that there could be a hidden security interest lurking in the background.
You mean the previous owner still has a loan on the car?
Exactly. And if the lender properly filed all their paperwork, they might still have the right to repossess that car, even though you bought it fair and square.
Oh, wow.
Trace, does that sound like a computer to you?
that's not a fair question because I know it
Okay.
is.
It's pretty amazing. I got to say, it's very conversational. It's these two characters, and they're the same in all of the podcasts. I think it's a wonderful way to break this down. In addition to this, we did some study guides for breaking things down, basic questions about UCC 9 that you could use, general essay prompts for writing, and glossary of key terms. We're adding that to each of these particular areas. Now, let me just tell you that we have done a bunch of these already, and I'll just list them for you. In torts, we've got a deep dive on intentional torts. In property, we've got one on mortgages because everybody loves mortgages. In evidence, we've done a deep dive in hearsay. In civil procedure, we've looked at federal jurisdiction. You saw the UCC 9. In contracts, we've got a deep dive on formation. In criminal law, we've done a deep dive on crimes. And on constitutional law, we've done a deep dive on individual rights. And we will be adding more of these. What's your take on that? I don't think, Bobby, you've heard this before, have you?
No, I haven't. And I think I have to look at this too. But I think with the advent of AI and anything that makes studying much easier, it's more an add-on to what we have already in studying for the bar exam. Having studied for the bar exam 6 times, it's a lot of work. If anything can make that process easier and efficient, I'm all for it because it's not about working hard, it's about working smart.
Yeah. One of the interesting things is that I've combined our outlines with the lectures with some other material, and then the AI takes that and puts it together. When you listen to these podcasts, literally, I have run them by other people and not told them that they were computer generated and they don't know it. They're extraordinary. We've checked them to make sure they're accurate, and they have been. I'm really excited about this as a way, if you're studying, let's say you're in evidence and struggling with the subject and hearsay has been problematic for you, take 20 minutes, listen to the podcast, do the study guide. You're going to have a clearer picture of the subject before you get into the detail we need for the bar exam. Sometimes students get so deeply into the detail that they forget the bigger picture of what they're trying to do and what the importance is. And in some cases, it's just foreign material. Secure transactions for a lot of people, if they didn't take the subject in law school, means nothing. It's just a complete jumble. And so being able to take 20 minutes and get this more conversational approach to it and then working back is great. Now, you will find all of these deep dive podcasts, and they're called deep dive. They are noted as optional assignments. They are the last assignment within the unit. So within civil procedure or con law or contracts or whatever it might be. And as we add them, we'll inform you. If you are in our course and would like to hear one without going into your online course, we posted in the community network. We'd love to get your feedback. The early feedback has been very positive, and I am excited about it. I think it's a great way to be able to summarize some of this material, get into it, and then do your additional study. I love to play with this stuff. So there we go. Tracy's giving me that look.
Oh, whatever we can do to help.
Exactly. If you have subjects that you want us to do a deep dive on, let us know. It's surprisingly easy once we get the right core material up in front of it. This is one of those areas where I think AI is making a difference. It's leveling the field. Let me turn to some student questions. We've got a few that we got in this week. The first is students that added the print book option are asking, how do they get the printed materials? Very simply, we print on demand from Amazon.com. It takes about 7 to 10 days to get your books. While you're waiting, there are digital copies in your online course and PDFs you can download. So you just have to be patient. It's just as Amazon prints and ships. The other thing you should know is that Amazon does not print all the titles and ship them all at once. So you're going to get several shipments. Don't freak out if you only get 1 or 2 books at first. They'll print send the others. We are constantly updating books as we get essay questions from Georgia, California, and the UBE. We will add those answers. Florida, we do have the July 2024 questions and our model answers already in that book. Check that out online if you don't have it. Next question we got is, how do I find mind mapping information? How do I learn about mind mapping? The answer to that is that in your photo reading course, there is a section on mind mapping in that course right at the beginning. There's also a section on mind mapping in your online course, and it's identified as mind mapping. Should take a minute though and talk about mind mapping as a note-taking system. Tracy, you're a big believer in this, right?
Absolutely.
Wait, what do you see as the value of mind mapping versus traditional note taking, the way you and I did it when we were in law school?
It's simply the difference between being transactional and relational. Transactional learning is flashcard learning, trying to memorize concepts in isolation. But that's not how our brain works, and that's not how we work as lawyers. You need to be relational. You need to take the concepts presented in the law and apply them to situations before you. In the bar exam, the situations before you are the questions and the essay prompts and the performance test prompts. And you're better off if you can think on torts that Jackson's done a deep dive on You're much better if you can look at that as a whole body, its own legal person. Figure out through mind mapping where various rules, laws, ways of looking at the situations, claims, and defenses fit within that whole person we call torts and how they relate to each other. You cannot do that by flashcards. You can't, if you take your flashcards and you put them up on the wall and you're putting them in groupings, you make a mind map, and that's okay. But if you just take flashcards and you go to your spouse or your sister and say, hey, quiz me on these, that isn't going to work for the bar exam. And it's not going to work for law practice either. It just doesn't work that way. What's been your experience about thinking relationally instead of transactionally?
I think you hit the nail on the head because you have to look at it in the whole context, not just in isolation. In the context of the bar exam, when you use flashcards, you're going to overwhelm yourself because just the sheer amount of flashcards, you're going to look at it, you're going to be terrified. Meanwhile, mind maps, you just have a piece of paper and then you can edit, take out, and it's just maybe 1 or 2 pages. And that's it. Compared to flashcards, 30, 40, multiplied by how many subjects, probably going to go crazy before the bar exam even comes around. So it's all about working smart, not hard.
Yeah. Working smart, not harder. Mind maps are really one of those tools, right? Sometimes people say, I'm taking too long on my mind map. You don't have to get every word of the outline into your mind map. If you go through the training that we do, we're pretty clear about that. Building the mind map incrementally, every time you touch the subject, you do more practice questions, you take a deeper dive into it. You keep building that mind map. And if you have taken the exam previously, and now you find yourself in a position where you have to retake again, you keep building on that mind map and you keep using it as a resource. It's a very powerful tool. When I took notes in law school, I hand wrote them and then I stuffed them in my backpack and I never pulled them out again. So there was very little value in the process. And while people talked about you learn from doing, yeah, but then it never got up again. The mind map really gives you something that's much more dynamic. And as you say, Tracy, it's relational. So we really encourage you to use mind mapping. When I talk to people who've been successful on their exams and I ask them if they mind mapped, the answer is almost 100% yes. It is a tool that people are using. I'm glad that we've got students asking about it. Make sure you go through and do those lessons. They don't take very long to learn. And of course, you can mind map by hand. You can do it on a computer. You can do a hybrid. We've got a product called Bar Maps in which we've created the initial structure of the mind maps for you in every subject. And then you can expand and personalize them. And I see students doing that every day. And I think it's a great idea.
The ongoing benefit of doing mind maps for these subjects is that no matter what area of law you go into, these mind maps are going to be resources for you going forward. Ever since you taught me about mind mapping, Jackson, I've been using these mind maps in mediations and arbitration work. And it's fascinating how much more I can get a handle on what the situation is, the topics and the issues are, and what the disagreements are. Whereas just taking linear notes before, I was scrolling through pages and pages of notes in the middle of an arbitration because I remembered that I wrote something down when I was preparing. Whereas with a mind map, it's just right there in front of you. When you are reviewing the answers to your questions, for example, you can go back quickly into your mind maps rather than shuffling through cards or mountains of paper and make the changes and notations that you need.
Yeah.
So it's really a great tool for law practice as well.
Yeah. And it's a great way to activate what you photo read. So if you're photo reading, then mind mapping, watching the lecture, then mind mapping, doing question practice, then mind mapping. So all of that's laid out in the course structure. Go ahead and follow it. And I think you'll be pleased with the results. Another question that we got, and I'll direct this one to Bobka for obvious reasons. Foreign trained attorneys. How do I get the resources and the help I need as a foreign trained attorney? Obviously, we have lessons specifically for that. Bobka, you do a Sunday group coaching call, and I know you get a lot of foreign trained attorneys on that call, don't you?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I always use myself as a BDA. Like, I've been there, done it, and there is that roadmap that you can do. And I think for this student, it would depend on what state they are trying to take the exam, because depending on the state, then you're going to have a roadmap as to how you have to move. But the way the program is geared generally, whether you're foreign trained or you're in the US, it gives you that layout as to how you generally have to proceed. And if you follow the program, trust the process, look at me, I'm on Exhibit A.
Make sure we will start our group coaching calls. Tracy, when are we starting? November?
Probably not till December.
We will start in December with group coaching calls. In the meantime, you can go through the course, conference with me, and ask questions. If there are things I'm not comfortable with, I'll reach out to Bobga and others who are alums and foreign trained attorneys. This course works well for foreign trained attorneys. So if you're in that circumstance and not a member, I invite you to take a look at it. We are well positioned to help you. Things like these new deep dive podcasts will make it even easier. There may be some things you've just never heard of before, and this is a great way to get an overview of that. Make sure you reach out to us if you're in that situation. All right, next question. This is the time of year when people are getting results back, and some people, if they're not successful, start asking about switching jurisdictions. I would start by saying that in general, I think the UBE is a good test to be taking if you can qualify for it, simply because your test score is portable. That's one reason. The second reason is that the threshold for passing is lower on the UBE than it is in Georgia, Florida, or California, significantly lower. And I think it's a fairer test. I think it's a more straightforward test. I'm always dazzled when I see people like Bobka that pass the Georgia exam. It's a tough test. California's a brutal test. Florida's a brutal test. That's why we single those out. But the UBE is a pretty good one. Somebody said, do I have to change my course if I want to switch from Utah to Mississippi? No, they're both UBEs. Nothing changes. It's just where you're sitting. Once you're into the UBE, you can sit any place that will allow you to sit. I would just look at the cost to sit, the character and fitness, the convenience factor. Some of these jurisdictions, obviously New York's UBE, but huge. And then there's some small jurisdictions where there's just a handful of people taking the test. So it just depends on what you want to be doing. You may be hearing about these alternative paths to licensure, and none of them are going to apply unless you're currently sitting in law school in a state that is using that system. And there are only a handful of them. For 99.8% of the people watching and listening today, that's just not an option for you. Stick to the UBE. What if you took Florida, you weren't successful, or you took Georgia or California? Does it make sense, Tracy, to consider taking the UBE if you've been taking these other exams without success?
Oh, I think for the reasons you just stated, yes, every bit so. Get licensed somewhere, and then your options become greater for you. There's so much work in law now that is from remote locations and specific areas of law where you can be licensed in a different state and practice the area that you want to practice. Yeah, path of least resistance here, if you can.
Yeah. One other advantage of the UBE, and this is not true of every state in the UBE, but many of these jurisdictions give you feedback in terms of your scores. They break down your scores by essay, they break down your scores by performance test and by NBE. Now, if you're in a state like Georgia, Bobka, you get nothing. You passed, you failed, and that's about it. And so there are some states that just don't give much in the way of direction. And I know that's frustrating to people when they can't get their scores in any detail and they don't know where to emphasize or where the strengths or weaknesses are. So I had a student ask me this week, does it make sense to take the UBE? It's one of the reasons. It's not the primary reason, but it's certainly a better reason. Our goal would be to have you pass, but if you're trying to get feedback, certainly better to do that. All right. Last question that I got this week, it was a great one. When should I start studying for the February exam? Bobka?
Yesterday, because time is of the essence. And as we started the podcast, there's the election next week and next month. The hurricane is coming. Holidays are coming. Time is going to go fast. So when should you start studying? Yesterday, because when you start early, you have more time towards the end of the program for review. And that review is as valuable as anything you can ever have. You only get there if you started early. If you don't start early, you're going to have some review, but it's not going to be as thorough and detail oriented as you would like. So start early, and the early version of you is going to appreciate the late version of you when it's time now to do that review, because on your hands, you have to do more practice essays, MBE questions, all of that stuff. And you don't get to that point when you don't start early.
Yeah, I think that's really true. Tracy, your thoughts? I know you agree. People should start now, right?
Yeah, I think is spot on here. There is so much anxiety in America now over weather and political weather and what's going to happen. That anxiety isn't going to end this weekend with the hurricane coming and going. It's going to extend past that. This anxiety isn't going to end on November 5th either, no matter who wins the presidential election. It's going to continue, and it's going to be a big distraction. You add to that the holidays, maybe your kids are trying to get back into a rhythm at school, you've got fall break, you've got all these things going on. You've got family making requests of you. I think Bobga is right. Just maybe a few weeks where you're not going to have distractions. Getting your time management now and making it flexible enough to manage some of these things you're not anticipating is really important. Along with that is getting a lot of sleep and getting in the habit of getting up early and working whatever it is that you're doing, even if it's weeding your yard, getting in the habit of working in 3-hour blocks so that you are training your brain to be able to set the bar.
Yeah. And the final thing I would add is I've gotten questions from people about, is it too early to start the coaching program? And the answer is no. You should be sending work in. You should be conferencing with Amanda and with Tracy, with me. You should be working on those pieces of your study. And if you haven't added that coaching, this is a great time to do that. We would encourage that. I know for many of you that'll be watching and listening, you're still waiting for results. I'll just leave you with what we've said several times today. When you get the results, take some time to grieve it, but get ready to move on. If you were not successful, you're going to have to move quickly. You do not have the luxury of waiting. And we'll stand behind you and with you and get you underway as fast as we can. We'll try and diagnose what may be weaknesses and areas that we can improve on. And we'll get that process underway as soon as possible. But we can't do anything until you reach out to us. So make sure that you stay in touch and let us know. I think that's all I've got today. Tracy, Bobka, anything that you wanted to add, or have we covered the ground for right now for early October?
I would say for those who are thinking of switching, trust me, there are multiple ways to get to the top of a tree. I took the bar exam 6 times. 4 of those times were with California, and California slapped the Jesus out of me. And then when I came to Georgia, I was like, okay, this is doable. Surprise, here I am. So I would say don't be confined to one jurisdiction. If there is another jurisdiction that is attainable, go for it. The practice of law is universal. Unless you're practicing state-specific law, I practice over continental United States, but I am bad in Georgia. So there is that flexibility that I can do anything I want. And I don't regret my decision because I am a lawyer now. That consideration should equally come into your thinking. And at the same time, you have to think ahead. Maybe you're no longer comfortable with taking this jurisdiction. Then you need to start getting ahead with character and fitness, getting your documents aligned and sent in, because as a lawyer, you have to anticipate and you have to move faster because time waits for nobody and you have to move ahead. So that's what I'll add.
Tracy, any wrap up thoughts today?
Listen to Bobka's lived experience. If you are someone who did not pass the bar this time, listen to what he's telling you. He took the bar 6 times. He never quit. He kept working. He came and they found this program and he was successful on this program. You can do this. It may take you a few times. The exam is in some ways rigged against you, but there are ways we have found to meet and defeat that. So listen to what Bobka's saying because it's inspirational to hear you and to listen to your lived experience. If you need a kick in the pants to get going, watch this Q&A later and listen to what Bob is telling you.
Absolutely. It's great to see you. We will have Amanda in upcoming webinars as well. She also does group coaching along with Tracy and Bobga. We'll get that started as we get closer to the exam. We know that's when people start to focus and lock in a little bit. So we're going to try not to distract you too much at this stage. Thank you both for being here today. It's great to see you. Thanks for those of you who are on live. If you're watching on replay, again, we're glad to have you with us. Reach out if we can be of help to you. And good luck to everybody that's waiting on their exam results in the next week or two. And with that, we'll say goodbye for now. We'll see you soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.